My name is HAMMED8736945, student number 8736945. This is about my network infrastructure project. It's a prototype project that contains two buildings, the business headquarters and the engineering and test. In each of these buildings we have a layer 3 switch and 3 edge switches. In the business headquarters building, we configured 7 VLANs on the edge switches, while for the engineering and test we configured 5 VLANs. Aside from the VLANs, we configured the trunk link that interconnects the switches. To verify the configuration, if I go into one of these VLAN, this switch, and I type the verification command show VLAN brief, as you can see, we have finance, HR, operations, customer service, business data center, staff Wi-Fi, guest Wi-Fi, and a black hole, which basically group the unused ports as a safety measure. To check the trunk link, we have the command show interfaces trunk, and as you can see, we have the gigabyte 1 and 2 being configured as a trunk mode. Similar commands can be used to verify the configuration on all other switches. The next thing we did was to configure the spanning tree protocol such that on the layer 3 switches on each of the building, the VLANs are made the root bridge. To confirm the configuration, if I go to this layer 3 switch on the business and headquarter building and I type the command show spanning tree, you can see for the VLAN 2 I have this bridge is the root, that's the status. Likewise, I have VLAN 3, this bridge is the root. If I keep going down, I can confirm that on each of the VLANs on each of the layer 3 switch, the status now is this bridge is the root. We've configured the VLANs as the root bridge. Similar commands can be entered on the layer 3 switch in the engineering and test building. The next thing we did is to configure channel bonding, and I make use of another packet tracer file just for convenience. So from the configuration and connections here, you see that on each of the switches we have more than one port linking them together. These are the trunk link. Now what we do is to group these ports into a port channel, and it's referred to as channel bonding. To test the connectivity or the configuration, I can go into one of these layer 3 switch in the business headquarters building and type the command show ETA channel summary. So now we have 4 trunk or 4 port channels on this layer 3 switch. We can type similar command on the second layer 3 switch, show ETA channel summary, and we can confirm that we have 4 port channels on the second layer 3 switch as well. So what we have now at this stage is that each of the devices in the same VLAN can communicate together. That is, all devices on VLAN 1 can communicate together. All the devices on VLAN 2, VLAN 3, VLAN 4 can communicate together. So we want to ensure that there is a communication between the inter-VLANs, and that is called the inter-VLAN routing. So we use the layer 3 configuration, that is SVI, to ensure that there is a connection between all the switches in the network. So to test the connectivity, if I go into one of the layer 3 switch and I use the configuration command that says show IP route, you can see these are all the VLANs that are connected together, VLAN 2 to VLAN 8, for this part of the project. Then we have the second part of the building. I say show IP route, and you can see VLAN 10 to VLAN 15 are all connected together. So what we have at this stage is that this part of the building, all the VLANs can communicate, and this part of the building, all these VLANs can communicate. So but we want a connection between the buildings. To achieve that, we use internet routing, and we go for the OSPF, which is a dynamic routing protocol. And basically what we do is to advertise the networks that are currently connected to each of the devices. So here the layer 3 switch becomes a router. Here as well, layer 3 switch becomes a router. Then we have two other routers. The ISP router, we provide a default route to it so that there it can have internet connectivity. So for each of these 4 routers, we advertise networks that are connected to them directly. And to check our configuration that it was done correctly, I go to the first router. I used another packet tracer for convenience. So I have this, which is a continuation. I just duplicated the packet tracer for convenience in terms of explanation. So for this, I say show IP route, and you can see all the connections. Anyway, all the connections, most of the connections were done through OSPF, and that is why we have an O there to show that the connectivity is via OSPF. So we can do the same thing to check on this switch or the router, show IP route, and you can see the connectivity. Some were connected directly and others were connected through OSPF. Then we have on this router, enable show IP route. We can see most of the connections were done via the OSPF. Then for the ISP router, so I have enable show IP route, and you can see most of the connectivity were done through OSPF. So with this, every devices in this particular configuration will be able to communicate with each other. That's the end of the project. Thank you.